And so, as we may feel overwhelmed by the 2.6 million people who became newly infected with HIV in 2009, our hope is in the fact that that number is nearly 20% fewer than the number of people infected 10 years ago. Our hope is in the fact that the 370,000 newly infected children in 2009 is a 24% drop from 5 years earlier. And our hope comes from the fact that last year alone, 1.2 million people received HIV antiretroviral therapy for the first time, an increase in the number of people receiving treatment of 30% in a single year. But even more than these numbers and statistics, hope is found in the rooms of this church when HIV-positive people who once felt hopeless discover that there really is life after that initial diagnosis. Hope is found in the hugs and smiles that our volunteers offer the guests who use our pantry. Guests who may not have received a kind word or a touch all day or all week, or God forbid, all month. As Christians, we live in hope for ourselves and the world because of what God has promised. God has promised Emmanuel to be with us. Today you may be living in a place that is crowded with fear and despair. Your health, your finances, your job situation, your relationships with other people, all these things may be crowding out the joyful life that God intended for you. If so, then try to make room for one more thing. Make room for hope. Last month, 33 miners were rescued after being trapped for 2 months in a collapsed mine. After the August 5th collapse, each miner restricted their food consumption to 2 scoops of tuna and a half cracker daily. And by the time the first exploratory drill reached them more than 2 weeks later, the men had reduced that to just 1 bite of food every second day. By that time, their bottled water reserves had dwindled to just under 3 gallons, and the men began drinking from metal drums of water tainted with motor oil. What was it that kept them going? In the darkness and seemingly hopeless situation, they somehow had to make room for hope, and they found it. The faith of Jose Enriquez, the miner some called the pastor, was key in helping his companions to hold on to hope. He led devotions twice a day, providing hope for his brothers. We need hope in this world. We need it today. Maybe more than ever, we need hope. The world is starving for hope, just as those Chilean miners were starving for that bite of tuna and cracker. Sometimes it's hard to find the hope that we need to continue on with life. If that's the case, then we need to do some rearranging. We may even need to throw out some things in order to make room for the hope that Christ offers. One of the titles of Mary, the mother of Jesus, is Theotokos, which means God-bearer. And it also means the one who gives birth to God. Less literal translations include Mother of God. When you and I provide hope for the world, we are also God-bearers. More and more members of the LGBT population are finding hope because of this church's ministry. We are God bearers. Emily Dickinson, along with Walt Whitman, is the most well-known American poet of the 19th century. But it wasn't until after she had died that her poems became famous. She led a reclusive life. During her life, only 10 of her poems were published. But when she died, her family found several private journals that contained over 1,700 poems. Over half of those poems were written during the years of the American Civil War. Through her poetry, Emily Dickinson kept her hope alive. I close with her words. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. May the hope that comes from the living Christ perch in the souls of each of us here, and may its song continue all our days. Amen.